Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Crypt Finder. I'm currently in a series right now where nightmares were once just woven into the fabric of our living room, and that came complete with shag carpeting, a huge state-of-the-art 25-inch TV screen, and Jiffy Pop popcorn. I'm Brian. Just consider me sort of your horror movie host, going through the underappreciated and often overlooked world of made-for-TV movies, at least in this series right now. So, once upon a time, many moons ago, remember, viewing options were somewhat limited. And so, the kind of movies that were made specifically for television had a much broader range of an audience. And it ran the gamut from psychological thrillers all the way down to supernatural horror. And these films, okay, sometimes the execution might be weaker, but the concepts were always A plus. Tonight, it's Haunts of the Very Rich, a made-for-TV psychological thriller that originally aired in 1972. It's a tale that delves into themes of existential dread and spiritual reckoning, although please don't let the title sway you too much. The haunts part of this might set you up for thinking this is going to be a very traditional kind of ghost story with a haunting involved, and that's not really true. And even the very rich part of it, I don't know. Maybe there is some sort of running commentary here about class and privilege, but frankly, outside of the initial setup where you realize that, yeah, all of these people have money and means, they're either wealthy or very successful, it really doesn't have anything to do with the crux of the story. This film opens mid-conversation with a group of individuals aboard a luxurious plane for an all-exclusive and extravagant vacation. The group here is very diverse, consisting of people who all seem to be well off financially, but they are also all dealing with personal issues or a crisis of some sort. One passenger is Al Hudsicker. He's played by Ed Asner, who was already on The Mary Tyler Moore Show playing Lou Grant. Here he's a powerful, successful businessman. He wakes up mid-flight, and even though, yes, his name is on the manifest, he's absolutely adamant that he's on the wrong flight, that he should be on a flight to Dallas because he has a very important meeting the next morning. We have Ellen Blunt, played here by Cloris Leachman. She was also, coincidentally, on the Mary Tyler Moore Show as well, and she would, of course, be very remembered for her comedic performance in Young Frankenstein. She was also in another made-for-TV movie that I covered on this same channel called Dining Room Only. Here she plays a woman dealing with loneliness and the emptiness of her high society life. Dave Woodruff is a very successful businessman, also on this flight with a very complicated home life. He's played here by Lloyd Bridges, who of course will be very well known to people from the TV series Sea Hunt. It actually spawned a whole line of comic books, and you see some examples here. The character very much wants a divorce, but his wife is completely dependent upon him and actually threatens self-harm whenever he even brings up the subject of dissolving the marriage. Lyle Dugan is played by Tony Bill. He comes from money. It is certainly noted more than once in this film that Daddy pretty much covers all of the bills, but he's on his honeymoon here with his new wife, Lori, who's played by Donna Mills, who, of course, became a regular on the primetime soap Knots Landing. You also have Annette Larrier. She's played by Anne Francis, who was in the classic sci-fi film Forbidden Planet in 1956. This is a nervous, tightly wound woman. She's really just waiting on her husband to join her in a few weeks. It's a way to completely detox. She wants only rest, relaxation, to be away from the kids and the pressures of family and home life. And finally, we have the Reverend John Fellows. He's played here by Robert Reed, who of course will be instantly recognizable as the lovable dad Mike Brady on The Brady Bunch. He plays a disillusioned clergyman really struggling here with his faith. This is a true ensemble cast. I ran through each one because not only are the characters and what they go through sort of linked to each other, but I also wanted to point out the actors as well. Many of them here display a real range of versatility, more so than a lot of the current roles that they were known for. Cloris Leachman, for example, someone we've already mentioned, certainly she had a lot of comedic chops, but here she's playing a very different kind of character. And the same thing for Ed Asner as well. He was always the sort of gruff but lovable Lou Grant on the Mary Tyler Moore Show, but here he's just an insufferable sort of character. And Robert Reed, again, he breaks out some real acting chops toward the end of this particular movie, which showed a side of him that you never really got to see in the Brady Bunch.
What happened? Nothing. Nothing at all happened. No visions, no dreams, and just nothing.
All of this is to say, just imagine a scenario where you get a lot of really good actors, but they're cast against type. So imagine something like the Broadway show Bus Stop, but with a much more metaphysical bent. It's clear, even in flight, some of the vacationers receive very different brochures, indicating more specialized activities or relaxation areas that seem tailored to the guest in this exclusive hidden resorts. And one of the conditions of the guest is they're not allowed to know where they're going. The windows are actually blacked out in the plane. The crew, they're not allowed to tell them where they're going. And when they finally land, they get to meet the manager, Mr. Seacrest, who's played here by Moses Gunn, who was in Shaft and The Never-Ending Story. They are welcomed via a short boat ride to the Portals of Eden, a luxurious, beautiful resort where all their rooms are fitted to meet their personality. This movie was actually filmed at the Villa Viscaya Museum and Gardens in Miami, Florida. It's open to the public. I've been to Miami like a handful of times in the last decade, and somehow I always miss the opportunity of going and seeing this particular place. I'd love to see it someday. If you are already thinking along the lines of this sounds kind of reminiscent of Fantasy Island, okay, you're not on the wrong track there. So remember, this movie aired September 20th, 1972. The pilot for Fantasy Island, the TV series that it became, the pilot episode actually aired in January of 1977. And yes, it is very difficult not to see some similarities. The original pilot had a darker edge to it than what the series eventually became, so I can imagine that some of the original pilot, where we have 3 vacationers that show up on Fantasy Island, they definitely get a lot more than they bargained for. Yeah, it's hard to imagine that this particular film did not influence that in some way. Okay, so back to Haunts of the Very Rich. This vacation resort seems to be a dream come true. Opulent rooms, gourmet food, stunning locations, but as time progresses, the guests begin to realize that something is off. A snake is found in someone's bed. There's a fantastic storm that shows up and it knocks out all of the power, so now the planes can't land. They start running low on supplies of food and water, and it just begins to become worse and worse. There's a general unease among the group. Then one of the staff dies, and the rest of the staff, who all belong to the same indigenous Indian population, all scatter, so they are left completely alone. There's an old radio that Ed Asner's character finds that he wants to tinker around with a little bit, and they can receive messages, but yet all of the emergency calls going out don't seem to work. The guests begin to unravel, revealing their deepest fears, their regrets, the dark truths about themselves, and then their host, Mr. Seacrest, decides to go out on a 4-day trek for help and supplies. But of course, now completely alone, the tensions rise, the group starts to turn on each other, questioning who or what brought them to this place and why. Haunts of the Very Rich is a chilling exploration of the existential fears that lie beneath the surface of a seemingly perfect life. The movie uses its beautiful backdrop for the psychological tension that creeps into the characters. The film never really rises to the level of creating an intense sense of dread, yet all the makings are there. You actually wonder if the script would have just gone ahead and tightened those screws just a little bit more. It could have been even more engaging. Now, believe me, everybody involved, they do a terrific job, and yet you can't help but wonder if it had pushed them a little bit farther and the characters could have become even more unhinged. Maybe it could have gone just complete Lord of the Flies. This was directed by Paul Wendkos, who actually helmed a lot of sort of classic TV series. He did some episodes of The Untouchables, Dr. Kildare, I Spy, and he also helmed the exceptional made-for-TV movie The Legend of Lizzie Borden from 1974. Perhaps the script here was just not as refined as it could have been, or the fact the basic concept was a slight reworking of the 1930 film Outward Bound, which was later remade as Between Two Worlds in 1944. The script here was written by William Wood, which was based on a short story from 1971 by T.K. Brown, but all of it is super derivative of the original 1923 play Outward Bound by Sutton Vane, which then led to all of the subsequent film versions. But Wendigos does an admirable job with what he's working with, and the actors, as I said, they're all really subtle. Wood handles the screenplay with pretty admirable service, but he was much more known for writing episodic television, and it shows in that some scenes just kind of peter out. And the ending also is kind of left without the bang you were expecting, but then again, based on where this story goes, maybe that's the point. Everyone commits, and in the end, they give us a really good time. There are some really interesting nods here. Some of the camera placement is really interesting. There is one really fantastic, creepy tableau shot toward the end of the film where the characters are just standing there, sort of resigned to their fates. Viewers are going to be much savvier of this situation than the characters are. Even though these vacationers start to unravel and they begin to question their circumstances, you're going to know where this is going way ahead of them. The movie doesn't end necessarily on an ambiguous note, yet you do have two characters who are still desperately trudging off through the jungle trying to find some means of escape in a situation where there is no escape. And frankly, I think that might be the point, that only hope was keeping them all functioning, and certainly by the end that's all dwindling away. They're all running in circles like rats in a maze. I did see this one many years ago, yes, way back in 1972, but I had not watched it again until just before shooting this video. And I've got to say, even though, yes, there were little vague bits and pieces of it that I recalled, I had forgotten most of it, and I was still pretty glued to the screen. I have said so many times during the series that on made-for-TV movies, even when they're not great, they are still super entertaining. And this one might not hit you with the gut punch reveal that, yeah, you don't see coming in the first 5 minutes, because you do, but it's still a great ride with a great cast of performers who know what they're doing. You have great locations and a subtle, creepy vibe. You can find versions of this free online that you can watch, but I can't help wondering what a gorgeous remastered Blu-ray of this would look like. Time has kind of washed out some of the colors, and the filmmakers also opted to use a lot of soft filter lenses, which have made it look even worse through the years. And so, yeah, just go in with a little bit of low expectations that the quality of the film is not going to be quite what you're used to. So many of these made-for-TV movies are essentially longer versions of anthology series like The Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits or even Night Gallery or more recently American Horror Story. But you are still going to have a blast with it. So until next time, everybody, stay curious, enjoy that vacation at Portals of Eden, and stay scared.